So for now, I am working with only one instance, classic way with SQL Server database. So I will add a tenant. So just add it like this for now, just to see that when a tenant is initialized, you can remove it. That's it. So now we can recreate it. So here, SQL Server, table prefix. So for now, I have only the default tenant. And here, I think this is this one. Great. Let's set up it. Okay. Okay, so I can refresh. It is there. We can see the new prefixed table. Let's navigate on the tenant so that we will have other things. Okay. And now here, under the sheet folder, we have a tenant folder in which we have media. We could have Lucene indexes. And under the W root, yes, I did a little modification with one line of code. Now, in place of having the ES cache or the MS cache or the sitmap cache, there are 3 cases for a cached file. We now have a folder per tenant like we have here. So there is one removing under that it so that each tenant can manage their own asset file, cached file under W root. So now we will delete the tenant. I don't need this anymore. So to be able to delete a tenant, you should disable it first so that it is no more served. And we will be able to create an internal shell context with all the feature it had. And we compose this shell context with all the features that has been installed, even it is no more enabled at this time. So let's disable it. So yes, when we disable tenant, we have no notification. So at the first time, when we remove one, I had no notification, but I added it. So because it is disabled, we can now remove it. Can be multiple one in a bulk action. And it is removed. So if we see in the database, all tenant one table were removed. And if we see in the file system, for example, we only have the default tenant, and here also. That's it. I can create a multiple tenant if you want. It works the same with when deleting 10 tenants, for example, at one time. What I can say is to retrieve all the database table of a given tenant. I am composing a shell context of all features that have been installed, and I am replaying the migration. By using a custom schema builder that don't create table or remove or alter and so on. I just enlist. I just create a post history of what has been done. So where it is.
So it means that if a feature has been removed, like doesn't exist anymore, there might be some tables that are still there.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Because you
was
know
searching for, yes, sorry. So here
you reply the migration.
Yes, here.
But you don't execute the queries. To know the tables, how do you know the tables?
I will show you. 1 second. So here, as I said, I create a maximum context of all features that have been installed. So here I retrieve all the migration. I was asking to me, maybe this one is sufficient, the create method, because normally when we do the create should be updated to do all what we need, but I also execute the update, and I will show you. So we have a custom.
Is it a fake?
Yes.
Tenant?
It is. We can see here. It is based on the shell descriptor of this tenant that is disabled, but that we want to remove, and we use the shell descriptor of this tenant. We use all the installed features. I try it. For example, you enable a feature that create a tab, then you disable the feature. Then, if afterwards you remove the tenant, it still deletes the table of this feature that was disabled.
So when all the feature migrations are executed, are the tables created?
No, we don't create anything. It is a fake schema builder.
Okay, so you have a custom schema builder. Okay.
Yes, this is the important part. I need to retrieve it. Where I was. This is here. So this is this one. So it inherits from schema builder, and when we do.
Well, we don't need to go into details. We just need to understand how it works. So it's just faking the creation.
Yes, and each time we create a table, it enlists an index table or a table or an alter column, all the things. It enlists it and define it in the.
What if the migration creates a select query?
I use, for example.
But if the migration itself reads the database?
No, we just enlist what all the migration has done.
What if the migration
has done,
but
by executing a fake migration step also, and we enlist here. We enlist all tab name, all the tab prefix.
Okay. Listen to my question.
Yes. Okay.
What if the migration is trying to execute a select query?
No.
How does it work? Because there is no table, so the connection will try to get to a database that exists, maybe.
Yes.
But it will try to do a select on a table that doesn't exist.
I don't understand which table.
Because you are not creating the tables.
Yes, I am doing creating the history of all tables that was created.
Do you create a table in the database?
It is already created, but I don't know which one belong, all the ones that belong to a given tenant. So I replay all migration to see what migration has created. And so then I have
maximum shell. The maximum shell has all the features.
Yes.
Including the ones that were not in the disabled shell.
Including all the features, the ones that were currently enabled or not.
Or not. In the case of or not, It's a new feature for the tenant. Okay, it was not there before. Will you create a table for this feature?
No.
No. Okay, stay there. You are not creating the table for this feature.
Yes.
What if the migration for this feature that doesn't have a table executes a SQL query?
I only execute SQL command at the end to remove the unlisted table, but
That's not the question.
When
There
I
is no
replace
table.
the migration, it doesn't create anything.
That's not the question. I'm at the state where you said it doesn't create the table. Fine.
Yes.
Now the migration has a step, an update step. Update
Yes.
from 1, update from 2, that you execute. The
Yes.
code in that migration has some code that loads content items, that does SQL queries, that does stuff.
Yes.
On the tables that were supposed to be created in the create step.
Yes, normally.
Okay.
But
No,
normally we only need to, normally the create method is updated and it returns the very
My
last.
question is, if the update step is executing SQL queries, but the table is not created, the SQL query will fail, correct?
Yes, but when
Hence,
I replace the migration, I don't execute nothing. I just unlist, and if it remove a table, I just remove it from the
fine.
list.
What I'm saying is that it will fail. Do you see the issue that failing happens?
Yes.
It will throw an exception.
Yes. So,
and the code after won't be executed.
If it fail, it will, I don't know, it will fail again when I want to replay, but maybe not. So it's a case when we installed the feature that was failing. Yes.
I'm saying that there are cases it might fail because
when migration
you don't have the table, and maybe the update step requires a table to be there to run. I know we have migrations that actually migrate the data by looking into the tables and then creating new records in new tables, right? I'm sure Jasmine did that for some Lucene thing or indexing stuff because we changed the schema and we need to move the data.
That what a given migration step does depend on what is currently existing in the database.
Yes. Or at least it will try to read the database or to create some records or do something on the tables, but you don't create the tables. So the step itself will fail. And maybe the next steps also will fail.
But if the table exists really...
yes, fine. But you said you're not... That's why I was asking since the beginning, what if the feature didn't exist? So the table didn't exist and you don't create the table. So any step that will require the table will fail.
You are saying if when the feature was installed, it was
not installed. That because you create a maximum thing with all the features that are currently not installed. That's the issue.
No, installed means that at some point it has been
sure.
Installed.
Okay, fine.
It
never installed.
Installed means it needs to be installed at least. It needs to have been enabled once.
Okay,
otherwise it is not installed.
Okay, so maximum means it has been installed once.
Yes.
Okay. Fine then. Then
yes.
The table exists.
You can reference 10 modules. If you never enable it, they will not be in a given tenant unlisted in the descriptor installed feature.
I still fail if the tables have changed or if the feature has actually implemented an install or whatever. But yeah, you haven't seen the case so far.
If a migration step alters the table is still the same. If it drop an index, I unlist it. So I remove from the table list. So I will not try to remove a table that has been deleted in one step. But normally all create methods are updated and return to the last version. So normally, I only replace the create method unless there is one module that did the mistake to each one we are doing a fresh setup, all migration steps are executed, which is what we don't want because migration step may have problem about the different providers. So it's always better to provide to the create method all what we need. And but if the removing fail, we can by code update the create method to be to be right and retry it after.
So another solution, and I think that was a suggestion in the SQL repository,
yes,
was to record the metadata or record the commands that were executed to create tables, remove tables, alter tables, and so on.
Yes.
And this was not done in SQL, but it could be done in Orchard with your fake.
This is what I mimic with my fake.
Yes. But this way, you don't need to have maximum or fake or whatever. You can just say,
yes, yes.
It can just be there all the time. Whenever we create tenants, there is a table called schema that lists all the tables that were created by the migrations and whatever. And this way you can just read this table to know what needs to be deleted, right?
Yes. Yes, what we implemented here in these classes could be done externally, yes.
However, the only thing is that the feature needs to be there before you can disable the tenants, so it will not work with previous versions. Now it will work with previous versions.
I'm not sure.
You can't, because it would have had to be there
for
when
your
the feature was
solution,
first.
For your second solution, but for,
yes.
With this solution, we can create the history. Yes,
sure, that's what I'm saying. With my suggestion, you can't do that with all tenants. With your solution, you can.
Yes.
But you have to rerun everything, and it's prone to failures. With my solution, it can't fail because it will just store what tables have actually been created over time. So might be nicer, or maybe we need the two of them, like a fallback. Like if the table doesn't exist, that might make sense. Like for 1.5 to say we handle all previous versions, but for 1.6 you should have had 1.5 already, so it should have stored all the tables that have been created for deletion.
You can also run your logic probably in a migration. Figure out what has been installed using this logic.
Exactly.
Just create a document and log
it.
That's a one-time thing. Then moving forward, anytime you add a table, you log to the document, and now moving forward, you're good to go.
Even better.
Sorry.
So the idea is that
I didn't understand.
So your logic to find all the tables when you click on something could be a migration. Like in a migration, you could say, let's replay all the features to know what tables have been created and store the list of tables in the document. Okay?
This is what I am doing.
Yes, but if you did it in a migration, and at the same time you do my technique, which is with like enhancing the schema provider, or I don't know what it's called, such that whenever a table is created, you store the name of the table in the same schema document. This way, when we want to delete a tenant, you just look at this schema document to know what tables need to be deleted. You don't have to play the migrations.
Yes, I understand, but what I don't understand is to play a migration. I don't
what you are doing today when you want to delete, to play the maximum, you are doing the maximum shell context and you are running the migrations. If you did it in a migration, automatically, you could rebuild the schema document and be sure that any next version of Orchard will have the schema document.
But if you play a migration to build the schema document,
yes,
it will create a table or not?
will create a table with the list of tables that have been created.
Yes,
basically create a migration.
A dedicated migration.
Yes.
That only builds the schema document, but how? By replaying what?
The stuff you made, replaying all the migrations. But this one.
Okay.
It's just because today, this schema document, if you have the feature to store all the new tables in a document, if you enable it today as a feature, then you don't have the past ones, right? It will work for all the new deployment of Orchard, because all new deployments will create new tables. But the issue is that you won't be able to delete all tenants from all versions. And that's why you might have a custom migration to build this list for all tenants.
But this custom migration will be run by who?
Can be the default in the default setting, whatever default feature.
Like I did it for this. I do it at the host level, but I am creating where it is. I am creating a shell context to run it. So you are meaning maybe a custom migration that is called.
Well, or you could say when you click delete tenant, if the document with the schema exists and has all the things, fine. Or if the version of the tenant is whatever, you can take this table. Otherwise, you can run your code. That's also.
Okay. Yeah, but that's not going to work though, because if you enabled it midway, it's going to clean only what's stored and not the. I think the best way to do this is to actually create the document table if it doesn't exist using this logic. So if right now we're running it and the document doesn't exist, we look for anything that has been installed in the past, figure out what tables that should have been created, and store that document. And if you're removing, you should only focus on that document table. I think that is the best logic that works in both cases.
Or you say you can't remove the old tenants because they are too old. But because it's not just that, even the cache and everything, maybe, I don't know if it matters, but the refactoring that has had to be done might still just work with all tenants.
And before forgetting, just to say that when we are using SQLite, we delete the complete file, and we can do this by clearing the pool connection.
Yeah, well, it works, but that would be nice if we didn't have to replay all the features at some point if we don't have to.
Yes, I understand.
I have a question and a comment. The question, what happened if you're creating a tenant and then something failed and half of the tables were created? Do you also store that and roll back those tables?
If something failed, because when we work, we have 2 levels of removing handler. Removing things. We have tenant level removing handler and host level removing handler for deleting local resource as a tenant folder and so on. But here at the tenant level, all what we are doing, if it fails, the tenant failed to be removed and the tenant is still there. It is not removed and no table was removed.
The question was, when you set up a new tenant and it fails, can it be automatic that it also deletes the tables that were already created?
Right.
So the idea is you create a tenant. Sometimes it fails, like in the middle, like a feature failed to install. Okay, and the tenant is completely unusable. It doesn't work, right? But there are 5 tables already in the database.
Normally, when a tenant failed to set up,
so what would be nice is that
nothing has been committed.
What would be nice? Well, are you sure? Today, that's not the case.
Yes.
Like the full thing I mean, I don't create tenants all the time, but I remember that when something fails, there is still a table in the database.
Maybe we have to check it.
So what would be nice, and that's Mike's suggestion, would be that because the setup screen says this is a connection string of the tables, create them, maybe it would be nice to also revert all the tables that were created, but it failed in the minute. If
normally the table are not.
Let's try. Right? We should try with a
because
exception migration.
Normally we cancel any session.
Yeah, normally. But I'm sure if he mentions that, and I also think I've seen that some tables are still there. If it was using the thing we talked about, then you could do that. You could say, oh, I know what tables were created. Let's delete them.
Okay.
And it's not just tables too, also the folder.
Oh yeah, folders and everything, data. So that's why you might want to do your logic to remove everything.
Yes. But yes, to understand correctly, but we will need what you were talking about, to implement the schema.
The schema. And Mike's comment makes me think of something because he mentions folder and everything. Maybe the migration API should have an API to say, I created a table, or I created a folder, I created a file, I did that, such that we can record these events, CQRS, and then play the opposite to clean everything. And this way, the schema would have a list of commands to execute so that we can delete cleanly something or revert the thing.
About the file, you are mentioning file.
Mm-hmm.
I just, in two places, I just delete the...
Yeah, sure, but just if in case a migration does something and wants to inform the system that something was created,
I understand, for everything that has been persisted, even if it failed afterwards.
Then, for instance, the cache feature, the image shard feature, we mentioned the same way that, oh, I created a folder for caching and it should be removed.
Yes, this is what I am doing.
Yeah, but
when
because you know it's there.
Yeah, but you need to do it when the tenant fails. The tenant, because the folder could be already created halfway, and then we realize, oh, we couldn't even finish creating the tenant. So something at that point, you have a document, schema document table in memory, keeping track of all the tables you already created. Plus, it will have a list of all the folders that were created, and then you will uncreate.
I'm not sure, because if the folder exists, I just delete it. If it doesn't exist, what I am taking care of, for example, listen indexes, I am taking care that the tenant.
You are taking care of that. Show us the code. Show us the code where you delete the listen index.
Oh, it's just.
Yeah, show us, and I will show you the issue.
Yes.
I know what you will show, and you will. I will show you something, and you will understand. Show us, where is the code for the listen index?
I am looking at it.
I think that if a migration step would fail because of a bad migration code, it could happen that the tenant is
the listen index is.
Yes, when the tenant is released, the listen file, just to say, the listen file are not locked, and because we need to disable
the tenant about that.
Before.
It's a detail. It's a detail.
Yes.
Where do you delete the listen folder? You are not deleting the listen folder here. You are deleting the shell folder.
Shell seed folder.
I don't see listen here. You are just deleting the shell folder. So that doesn't apply.
I don't read to, yes. Yes, for a set of features that we know that put things under the, for example, the seed folder, we differently delete all.
Okay. I just want to focus on the question. There is no listen folder here. So where do you delete the is-cache folder?
So it is in the other one here. I just delete in the same way. I am checking if there is a.
You are not deleting the is folder here. You are deleting the www root for the tenant.
For the yes, it may include the image.
So that's not the question.
The media cache and the sitemap cache.
Sure. My point was that I wanted you to show Because you said, oh, I'm deleting the Lucene folder. I'm deleting the IS cache. No, you are deleting.
Not explicitly.
Yes, that's very important to say that. Because
yes,
if you were, I would have proved that it's wrong, because you would assume that there is a Lucene folder somewhere in a code that doesn't know about Lucene. You are assuming that there was a cache folder in the code that should not assume there is a cache folder. No, you are deleting.
It is a service at the host level to delete all local resources that are normally put.
My point was, if you have to do assumption about things that exist like Lucene, like IS cache, then you might want to do more of that, and then you need an API for migration to tell you, I am the IS cache, I am the Lucene folder, I am that and that, so you should delete me later.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what's my point.
Yes. So if you will I've choose to do it explicitly because I am calling a tenant level removing handler. We could have it could have.
There is nothing explicit here.
The job of the media module. Yes.
There is nothing explicit here. You are deleting the shell folder. You are deleting the root shell folder. There is it's fine. That's okay. There is nothing to say. And then modules can put files in this folder. That's fine. Just in case, Mike's suggestion was, if someone creates a folder somewhere else than in these two folders, it would be nice to be able to also delete them.
Yes, but he can do that. In that case, specific case, it has to implement a tenant. I am lost where I am. It has to implement a tenant level handler.
Well, you could say that for all the migrations, right?
Yes.
And for the tables.
Yes. We use the existing tenant event handler on which we added a removing handler on which we pass the removing context. And so I think it is done tenant level removing handler. It is done here. Yes. In the context we talk about. So here, each tenant event handler are called here.
I will tend to try to delete explicitly those cache folders because you never know what is stored in those folders. Like I know that we used to use the root folder for storing a robot.txt file for each of the tenants, which was added inside the tenant folder. But I'm just saying, we never know what people are storing in the root.
That's why I delete the whole tenant folder, And if there are specific assets under the tenant one folder, it will be removed. The future has the responsibility that when the tenant is released, no lock should remain on a given file and so on. Like it is done for Lucene, for example, the lock are released when we release the module, when we release the Lucene feature.
I think it is fine, though. I would tend to keep some files in there, but if you say that if you remove a tenant, that it removes everything, then fine.
That's the goal. Yes. That's the goal of the feature is to delete things.
Another thought on the migrations. Maybe another idea, we can have one method in migrations called down. So in the down method, we can have a statement that does, well, maybe
we already discussed of this, but it lets, in summary, it let too much responsibility to some for each individual module, and indirectly about migration. This is what we are doing by indirectly by replaying the migration of all installed features.
Well, if we have the down method, then if you just call the down method on everything, I mean, wouldn't that just...
we have it and nobody implements it. That's the issue. And I think that's a good point, opposed to what I said with the API to let people mention what has been created, because they don't. even if you tell people, hey, if you call this method, we'll be able to delete your folder, your file, and your tables, nobody writes it because we didn't even write it.
Maybe they just don't need that function then. But if you want that function, the remove function, you need to implement the down, and that's the whole purpose, because that way you have full control on what you want to remove and what you don't. Because obviously having a remove function is scary, right? Because what if someone hacked the tenant website and now they can just go and delete every single tenant, right? So it could be scary. Someone might come back and say, hey, I don't want that, right? So
That's why I was saying, yeah.
The point is, I think maybe having just to call the down method, and if you implement the down method, we're going to honor it. But if you don't implement the down method, we're not going to remove it.
But if multiple modules don't implement the down method, and we will have a junk file and so on, and it should be well documented. Take care if you delete the tenant. Take care, we will delete all related resources.
Yeah, but the point is that if you remove a file like a JPEG file, which is a photo and that you started on your server and you remove it, then you lost it. There's nothing there that you can do. And
and another thing also on the UI, this is a comment. When you in that remove button, that warning should explicitly say by removing, you will permanently lose the data, you will permanently lose the tables, you will permanently lose the folders, and also I think you should require the admin to retype their password.
Yes, about more explicit UI warning. I agree. Just suggest them and we can.
Yeah, but also I think you should also have them type their password one more time, because you don't want
someone.
You have to
type the name of the resource. Yeah.
Do we remove the blob storage too? Are we deleting this? Or
yes, good question. For this specific feature, I added the implementation of removing in our module in the removing handler, so that we can remove the related blob or related bucket in Amazon or related whatever. Because here we have no choice. It can't be done at the host level. Should be done at the tenant level by the related feature. Yes, it has been done.
I don't want to use it. It's scary.
Yeah, I would make this one
optional. And we have, sorry, Jasmin, and we have the option. We already have the option to create, for example, for blob, a container on setup. I added the option to delete the container itself on removing. So you have the choice to not delete the container on removing.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, idem for Amazon Bucket. Okay. So many work to do still?
No, nothing. Like just technically everything works, but some design decisions.
So we can discuss on GitHub for what we have to add, or a separate pull request.
What we have is like, do we agree about the solution, or because it works, and something that works beats anything that doesn't work, and it's just design. But
I can. I will not do it, but if you request, I can demonstrate that enabling two features, then disable it, then see the table it created, and remove the tenant to see that these tables are deleted too, and so on.
That's fine.
And one more last thing for me is I would also create the settings in the app configuration only, no web, that allow you to force that feature, because what if someone again hacked the host or the default tenant? You don't want them to be able to enable that feature if the app settings say never use that function, because I mean we all agree this is a power function, right? You don't want it to be misused. If someone go in and delete every single tenant I have, I'm in big trouble, right? So I think That feature is great, but it should be used very, very, very cautiously. And we should allow the user to say, never allow or allow it.
Okay. What you are suggesting, different permission or configuration?
No,
or
setting.
App settings.
File-based setting.
Yep,
and and what will be the I assume the default will be you don't have it?
Don't have it, correct. Because if someone wants it, they want to explicitly go and say, hey, I'm going to allow this on my site. I'm going to accept the risk.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And there is no audit trail because you delete the audit trail.
Yeah, you delete everything. You lose everything, which is exactly my point. So it's very powerful, but we just have to be careful. However, in the setup context, if something fails, delete everything. You don't need permission for that because we failed to create it, so we delete it automatically. There's nothing to lose at that point. But if there's a tenant that exists,
I will do some tests about setup failing and see what happened. I think we create local resource for system, but I am not sure we create something in the database, but I will check it.
Thank you. It was great work, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Otherwise, yes, we could demo many things, but I think here the important concept is there. So that's it for now.
Thank you.